the power of the Spirit and in union with Christ, let us pray to the Father. We pray that your guidance, wisdom and support be upon these individuals as they make decisions today. Help them all to make caring decisions that will benefit the local community and enrich the lives of all who live here in Horsham. Give them the strength to stand up for those in need. We pray for their cheerfulness and a generous heart on all councillors and officers, that they bring joy to their work and to all that they will meet. May the Lord bless them and keep them from all evil, and bring us all to everlasting life. Amen.
I have some housekeeping announcements. Please note the location of the fire exits. Please make sure that your mobile phones and other devices are switched to silent. The meeting is being live streamed and an audio recording being made. Please switch on your microphone when addressing the council and off when you have finished speaking. In relation to points of order, members will need to indicate first the rule and second the way in which it has been broken, as is required by the Constitution. This will enable me to rule accordingly. Please can I remind members to talk to the point, and Cabinet members to ensure that their announcements are just that. Moving now to apologies for absence. We have had apologies for absence from Councillor Joss Potts and Councillor Tricia Utan. Moving now to agenda item 2, minutes of previous meeting. I move that the minutes and exempt minutes of the meeting held on the 16th of October be approved as a correct record. Do I have a seconder? Thank you, Councillor Beavis. Does anybody wish to comment on the accuracy of the minutes? Right. Are you all agreed that I may sign the minutes as a correct record? Thank you. Moving on now to item 3, to receive any declarations of interest from members. Do any members have any interest to declare in respect of any items on tonight's agenda? Councillor Knowles.
Thank you. My family have a farming interest, so I won't be partaking in that discussion.
Thank you, Councillor Knowles. Councillor Vanderbilt.
Similarly, Chairman, I have a farming interest, so I will recuse myself.
Thank you very much. Councillor Perry.
I don't think I have a registrable interest, but for the interest of transparency, I just want to say I do have Ukrainian guests living in my house, and that's regarding motion 3.
Thank you very much, Councillor Perry. Anybody else? No. Oh, sorry, Councillor Trollope. Apologies.
Sorry, I also have a Ukrainian guest living with me.
Thank you very much. Right, okay, that concludes section 3. Section 4, announcements. I'll start with a welcome to Cheryl Sweeney, the recently appointed, recently elected councillor for Den. Welcome. Secondly, I'd just like to congratulate Horsham District Council and the bid for the magnificent Christmas lights that we have in Horsham, and for the fabulous events that they're putting on. It was a great pleasure for me to be there at the opening of the lights, and there were around 3,500 people all over Horsham. In fact, most people complaining they couldn't see anything because there were so many people. And in fact, the first thing the officer asked me to do was to give a health and safety alert from the bandstand. But thank you so much to the bid team and to the Horsham District Council for all they've done, which is probably why Horsham has been recently seen in a poll to be the 13th happiest place in the United Kingdom to live, which is a wonderful thing to say. Right, I now move on to section 4B, leaders' announcements. Councillor Bob.
Thank you, Chairman. I have two announcements. The first is for the Council to note that Councillor Cheryl Sweeney has been appointed to the Unparished Area Committee and the Planning North Committee. She has also been appointed to the Environmental Health, Recycling and Waste Policy Development Advisory Group to replace Councillor Lynn Lambert. The second announcement is to make members aware that the Council has received an application for a community governance review in respect of the unparished area of Horsham Town. This request has come from the Horsham Blueprint Business Neighbourhood Forum, which many members will be aware is the designated neighbourhood forum for the unparished area that prepared the neighbourhood plan for the unparished area. This is essentially a community organisation with representation from the three neighbourhood councils, the Horsham Society and other groups such as the Horsham District Cycle Forum and others as well. This application will be considered at next week's meeting of the Governance Committee. The agenda papers are available now on the Council's website, and just to say that it is many years since a governance review has been conducted in respect of the unparished area, so I welcome this application, and would just note that a governance review for the entire district is also in the draft annual plan for 2025-26, because it has been something in the region of 13 years since there was a governance review for the whole district, and best practice is for these to be conducted every 10 to 15 years. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Councillor Buffy. Are there any Cabinet members who wish to speak? Councillor Raby.
So I've got some good news. So the People's Budget winners have been announced. So this was launched this year. It was a new initiative, and over 3,500 votes were cast for local organisations that would help children and young people. So I'm just going to run through the winners. I know we're going to have a long meeting today, so I won't waffle on, but we'll just announce the winners. So the winners are Happy Accidents for a children's parade, For the Youth for regeneration of their outdoor area into an activity zone, the First Shipley Scouts, they'll be creating a camping facility and essential maintenance cost, Hillside Scouts campsite for a new trailer to transport to key events, Horsham Matters will be setting up a mobile toy library district-wide, West Sussex Scouts will be setting up a mobile event and operations hub, Holy Trinity School will be organising children's trips, the Queen Elizabeth School will be creating a drive deck for wheelchair users, and Springboard will be creating some free play and stay sessions and wellbeing packages for young families. So there are going to be a lot of children benefiting from this budget, and I can't wait to see it rolled out. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Raby. Councillor Mark. Yes.
Thank you, Chair. Not as exciting as the People's Budget, I'm afraid. This is an update on the 2022-2023 Statement of Accounts from the Audit Committee, who, as you may be aware, are delegated the responsibility of approving the Statement of Accounts each year. Council officers publish the 2022-23 draft statement within the regulatory timeframe of 31st of May 2023. But due to the national backlog of unfinished audits and audit resource constraints, our auditors, E&Y, were unable to perform a full 22-23 audit for the Council before the backstop date. Only the work on the value for money conclusion was performed, and no significant weaknesses were identified in this area. This disclaimed opinion on the accounts therefore reflects capacity issues within the audit industry rather than any fault by our own finance officers. This disclaimer route is part of the national programme to clear the historic audit backlog across the country, which is why we at HDC have been caught up in it. The 2022-23 accounts were approved by Audit Committee on the 27th of November, and a disclaimed opinion and certificate issued by the Auditor on the 28th of November. I would like Council to recognise the important work that the Audit Committee Chairman, Councillor Livingston, together with all members of the Audit Committee, have done in this area. As a further update, subject to the resolution of a small number of final matters, officers and external auditors are on track to finalise the full audit of the 23-24 statement on the 19th of February next year, which is also within the end of February 2025 deadline for clearing the 2023-24 accounts backlog. Hope you're not getting lost in the numbers here. I hope I'm able to update you with more good news on this at the next council meeting on the 24th of February. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Skid.
Thank you very much, Chair. Just good news as well. It's about the pantomime. We've finally broken the record for the best-selling panto ever here this year, and the record has now been set at 16,102 who are lined up or have been to the panto. I think that's great. I think it's very encouraging. I think the officers and the staff over at the capital should be congratulated on the production that is there. So well done, and we look forward to even more selling tickets for next year's panto. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Skip. Any further cabinet members? No. Okay. I believe the Chief Executive has no announcements, so we will now move on to item 5, questions from the public. There are no questions from the public have been received. We therefore move on to item 6, which is on pages 27 to 30 on your packs. Item 6A, planning application pre-fees. I will hand over to Councillor Ruth Fletcher to introduce the report and make the recommendations.
Thank you. Following our Planning Advisory Service review in February 2024, we're proposing a number of changes to our planning pre-application service which we'd like to implement from January 2025. Most people here will be familiar with this because it's been through PDAG and through Cabinet. Our proposal simplifies the service for our customers, ensures it covers our costs while still remaining competitive in order to encourage our customers to utilise it. Pre-application inquiries improve the quality of the applications we receive and are a great opportunity for prospective applicants to engage with us and gain insight into the requirements needed to have a successful application. This is something that's becoming even more important with the changes nationally in determination times for planning applications. It becomes ever more important for applicants to get things right first time rather than rely on repeated delays to the determination to sort things out. And it's an opportunity for us to earn fees from the pre-application service. There have been no significant issues raised on the proposals so far, which, as the report explains, are competitive fees. So I would like to move the resolution.
Do we have a seconder? Do you wish to speak now or later?
At the end, if necessary.
I will now open this up to the floor to debate. Councillor Serkis.
Thank you, Chairman. Unfortunately, I missed the opportunity to go to the Cabinet meeting on the 20th of November, and therefore I didn't have the advantage of hearing the discussion around this item at that stage. I notice in the report we're told that the reason for action is to update and improve the current pre-application offering. I listened carefully to what the Cabinet member said, but I'm not sure from that I gleaned precisely what the improvement in the current pre-application offering would be, which presumably is meant to be some sort of justification for an increase in fees. And when she answers, can I say, I and some of my colleagues are, let's just say, we think that maybe when officers give pre-application advice, maybe it isn't stressed or stressed strongly enough that whatever advice is given by officers, the application may end up being referred to one of the two planning committees, and it may well be that members at those committees will take a different view, and therefore even though the officers have said that an application from their point of view is acceptable, an applicant may find that when members get hold of it in the planning committees, it's found, from members' point of view at least, to be unacceptable. I mean, that's a major caveat, has to be a major caveat, on the advice that's given at a pre-application point in the process. And I wonder whether the Cabinet member can give me some reassurance that that is stressed and stressed forcefully enough when pre-application advice is given.
Thank you, Councillor Serkis. Councillor Fletcher, would you like to address those points?
Well, I think I'd take issue with the suggestion that the planning committees get hold of applications. We're striving to, as ever, be professional in the way we determine our applications rather than get hold of them and rip them to bits. However, it goes without saying that when the pre-application advice is given, that is not a guarantee that there will be an approval that results from it. And I'm sure the officers will be taking note of the need to ensure that applicants are fully aware of that, particularly as we go into have more of these coming ahead. The advice we're expecting will be improved in various ways. We're looking to be more helpful to our householders, that they get better value for what they're for this, and we're also hoping that we'll be able to open up our pre-application service more to members where the applicant is interested in it, so that there can be some more community consultation involved in this sort of thing as well. I don't know whether the officer want to add anything more. No, thank you.
Thank you,
Chairman, I heard the word improved, but I don't think I heard an explanation from the Cabinet member as to exactly what improved meant. I don't want to delay this meeting because we've got a long one, but what I hope will happen is that in the fullness of time we'll get some idea in what way the pre-application advice procedure has been improved.
I have every confidence that will come through. I now invite Councillor Bainham to second the motion. Sorry, do you have a new point to make, Councillor Lambert?
I would just like to say I fully support this. It's about time it was done, and I think it's being done very well to help the small schemes at the expense of the larger schemes. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Lambert.
Yes, I'm very happy to second this motion. I won't add anything further because any points that I would have made have already been covered well enough by Councillor Fletcher. Thank you, Chair.
Councillor Fletcher, do you wish to reply? I believe you already have. Or make any further closing comments?
I'm happy to leave it where it is.
Okay, we will now vote, put this to the vote. All those in favour of approving the recommendations on page 27 on Agenda 6, the agenda, please show. Right, the vote is unanimously passed. Thank you, everyone. Now move on to building control fees, which is item 6B on the agenda. I call again upon Ruth Fletcher as proposer to introduce the report and move the recommendation.
We've reassessed building control charges. These are required to help cover the costs for the fee-earning work that's carried out. The increase in fees is required to cover the new responsibilities from legislative requirements and the associated operational costs. In addition, there are temporary staffing costs to cover and inflationary pressure impacting the service. It's therefore important we put the fees up now to cover these additional costs. It is important, however, to recognise that building control fees continue to be a very small percentage of the total funding required for a successful renovation project. So to put a little bit of background to that, many members will be aware that post-Grenfell there are new requirements for building control inspectors to have qualifications to justify prove their position. Everybody has been having to go through an examination process to get qualified at various levels on the scale. HDC has actually done a very good job in getting people trained up and passing these examinations. However, nationally, there has been an issue that a very large number of existing building control inspectors have been approaching retirement age and have decided they prefer retirement to taking more exams. As a result, there's a significant shortage of building control inspectors. This is particularly difficult for an authority like ours, where we're close to, within working distance of London, but without London waiting. And the result is that authorities like us are losing building control inspectors at a very substantial rate, who are going off either to work in London or in particular to work in an increased number of private practices where there are very much higher fees available because of the shortage. As a result, we have lost a number of building control inspectors because, frankly, it's in a public service. It's not possible to pay the fee rates that are being commanded in the private sector. And as a result, we will have to be relying on some agency staff, which will have a knock-on impact on our own costs. I want to congratulate the officers who have been alert to this problem from an early stage and working with our partners in Crawley, with whom we've had a joint arrangement to come to a solution so that we can continue to cover our work. Because though this is not designed as a profit-making service, because of the legislation, we do have to offer this service because there is a significant fraction of it which is a statutory obligation on us. So we have to find a way to work through this, and the only way to do this is to raise our fees. As far as we can see, we are still offering competitive fee rates, and we know from our past work that people do like to come to us because you do get a very good level of service, a high level of efficiency and knowledge, particularly for the smaller builders. So we will continue, we anticipate, to get a certain level of business, even in times where we're constrained in terms of what we can offer. We do recognise that although building control costs are still a small proportion of the total cost of building, that if you are a small builder or householder, it's quite a daunting issue, and we've taken time to make sure that we're offering the best value for money we can for those smaller customers. So, for example, in the past we've had an automatic requirement that you pay for a site visit and for the fees itself. By combining the offering and sort of pruning out unnecessary parts of that, we're able to keep the costs down for the smaller people. So it's an unfortunate situation we're in, but I think the officers are really doing a good job at managing it, and again I commend the recommendations to you.
Thank you, Councillor Fletcher. Do we have a seconder? Thank you, Councillor Barnum. Do you wish to speak now?
I'll speak
wait
at the
till
end.
after debate? Okay, I will now open this up to the floor. Councillor Vickers.
Thank you, Chairman. I'd like to endorse what the Cabinet member has said. I know there's a shortage nationwide of suitably qualified planning inspectors. Agency staff are costly, and it's perfectly reasonable for the fee increase to be used to offset those increased operational costs. So I'm happy to support the recommendation. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Vickers. Councillor Lambert.
Thank you, Chairman. Yes, likewise, I would like to endorse this. Our building control surveyors did very well in their examinations, so we're a product of our own success, and now we're needing agency staff. They're horribly expensive. Fees have to go up. It's a statutory service. We must do it. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Lambert. Councillor Sweeney.
Thank you. Sorry, I'm learning how to work the equipment. And to thank you earlier, by the way, for your kind welcome. No, I'm curious, please, Councillor Fletcher. I noticed that we do need to use agency staff, which is expensive, more expensive, I suppose, than in-house building control inspectors. I'm just wondering if you could explain a little bit the actual differential in the cost for having to use agency staff, and if it's a long-term proposition, then perhaps is there going to be a review about salary increases within the council officers?
Yes, we will be looking at the salary levels and whether we're going to introduce market retention fees and so on. We've been though, as I said previously, there are limits to which we can do this. So it is under constant review. It is a very fluid situation at the moment, and I think officers know that if they can recruit their own staff, permanent staff, they will prefer to do that. But it's sufficiently fluid. We really can't tell how long we'll have to carry on using agency workers for. Meanwhile, we have actually reorganised the way the department is structured so that we can make more use of a non-technical management function, so that those people who have got the qualifications and skills are fully utilising those skills for the benefit of our customers. I think that's about as far as I can say, unless the officer would like to add more.
All I was going to add, if I may, is just to explain that we are very much investing in growing our own expertise. So we have a number of apprentices that are going through training programs. So we are confident that we've got a stream coming through, but exactly as Councillor Fletcher outlined, at the moment it's the more highly qualified surveyors that are in extremely short supply.
Thank you, Councillor. Thank you, Director. Councillor Bainham, do you wish to speak now, Mr. Secretary?
Yes, thank you very much, Chair. I just want to reiterate that this is a statutory service that we have to provide, and it's something that costs us money. We're also not actually allowed to make a profit out of it, so it's not a money-making concern. So all this is about is making sure that the service pays for itself and is not subsidised by other council taxpayers who may feel a bit aggrieved if they were. Thank you. And I'll second the motion.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Fletcher, do you wish to make any closing comments or reply to any of the points raised? Thank you. I will now put this to the vote. All those in favour of approving the recommendations on page 27, item B, business control fees. Please show. Thank you. Sorry. Okay, the motion is passed unanimously. Thank you. Moving on now to item C, statement of licensing policy. I invite the proposer, Councillor Jay Mercer, to introduce the report and move the recommendations.
Thank you, Chairman. Members will remember that it's a requirement of the Licensing Act of 2003 that we as a licensing authority publish a statement of policy at least every 5 years. We discussed the draft in June at Cabinet and recommended it to Council in July to go for public consultation. We have had one significant comment from that consultation, which is from Public Health. We have therefore included some minor amendments which relate to public health, and they are on pages 10 and 11 of the statement. Other than that, we recommend Council through Cabinet to adopt the statement of licensing policy set out in Appendix A.
Thank you. Do we have a seconder? Councillor Grant, do you wish to speak now or later? We will now open up to the floor for debate. I suggest therefore we put this to the vote. All those in favour of approving the recommendations on page 28 of the agenda, please show. The motion is passed unanimously. Thank you very much indeed. We're making a good lick. Well done. Moving on now to item 7, recommendations from committees, and which you will find on page 31 of your packs. Now I will hand over to Councillor Belinda Walters, Chairman of the Governance Committee, to introduce this report and move the recommendations.
Thank you, Chair. At our meeting on the 12th of November, the Governance Committee received a report on the implementation of the Procurement Act 2023, which is due to come into effect next year, along with a revised procurement code and revised contract procedure rules. During the meeting, members suggested some further changes to the procurement code, and the committee delegated authority to the monitoring officer to make such minor changes in consultation with the Deputy Leader and Cabinet Member for Finance and Resources, as were required prior to publication of the full Council agenda. A revised procurement code has been prepared and is included with the full Council agenda. I move the following recommendations. 1. To adopt the revised procurement code as contained in Appendix A to the Governance Committee report and subsequently amended with effect from the 24th of February 2025 or such later date as may be determined by central government as the commencement date for the new procurement regime. 2. To adopt the revised contract procedure rules as contained in Appendix B to the Governance Committee report with effect from the date that the revised procurement code is adopted. And 3. To note that the monitoring officer will make such other minor changes to the Constitution as may be required pursuant to her authority to do so, per Article 13, paragraph 13.3b of the Constitution, to give effect to the above recommendations should these be approved. Having made the following recommendations, I hand it back to the Chair. Thank you.
Thank you. Do we have a seconder?
Hello, Chairman. You will have noted that I've only just arrived, with your discretionary permission, I would be delighted to second this motion. However, I understand it might require your discretion to do so, as I've only just entered the chamber. My apologies, I was delayed by traffic after work.
Thank you. Can you just give me a minute to consult? Can I invite Martin Boffey to second, as you did not hear the whole of the speech?
Yes, I'll do it. Thank you very much, Chairman.
Thank you, Councillor Boffey. Do you wish to speak now or later in the debate?
Later if necessary.
Councillor Serkis.
Thank you very much, Chairman. Procurement is something that national government and local government historically has been pretty useless at, and we all know the stories that give graphic proof of that over the years. So I fully support the new code here, the new approach here, but there is an issue in 1.5 I'd like to raise with my learned friend, the monitoring officer. And that's what a little bit of clarification where it says the procurement code does not apply to certain types of legal advice, such as relating to judicial proceedings and or dispute resolution. I would have thought elements of a procurement code logically would apply to any circumstance where we are engaging for external advice on legal matters, even if not all the provisions would be relevant. So I wonder whether the monitoring officer can just give us a little bit of clarification initially as to why all types of legal advice aren't covered, and if there's a good reason for that, why at least some elements of the code of procurement practice doesn't apply to those for which it's not appropriate to have the whole rigour of the code. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you. I think that we apply what's known as the light touch regime to procuring legal services, but we do have our procurement expert with us here this evening, Thomas Walker. Thomas, would you mind coming in to assist with responding to this question?
Thank you. I'm Thomas Walker, the Senior Procurement Officer for the shared procurement services of this council. I would quote the Procurement Act. Under Schedule 2, you will find a list of all exempted contracts under the Procurement Act where it does not apply. Specifically, I quote Schedule 2, Section 14. This specifically says that following services are exempt: legal services, including legal representation by a lawyer, giving of legal advice in proceedings, document certification, authentication services, and legal services requiring enactment and report. Typically, court-related matters. That section of the code is to give effect to that element of the Act I have just quoted.
Thank you so much, Mr. Walters.
I don't really have anything further to add, and it is incumbent upon us to have an up-to-date procurement code, and therefore I will recommend that we approve it. Thanks.
Thank you. So, Belinda, do you wish to have any? Do you have any closing comments, Councillor Walters?
No, I've got nothing to add, but I would thank the officer for attending this evening and giving us his expert opinion.
Thank you. I will now put this to the vote. All those in favour of approving the recommendation on page 31, please show. Thank you. The motion is passed.
Thank you, Chair. So, this report proposes to change the help that we give to our most vulnerable residents to help them pay their council tax. Following consultation feedback from other preceptors and the public from the 1st of April coming, the report recommends that we will now pay 100% of the council tax of those financially vulnerable people instead of the 90% we pay today. At the moment, we only help customers up to a sum equivalent to the council tax of a property valued at Band D. This report recommends raising this to include Band E. The report also recommends to increase the limit on the savings people can have before being precluded from applying for the scheme from £6,000 to £10,000. The report further recommends to change the process of non-dependent deductions from the 1st of April 2026, making them simpler for the customer to understand and more efficient to administrate. In the consultation process, we had supportive feedback from Sussex Police, West Sussex County Council, and the majority of 52 other members of the public and parishes. The continuous work we do to increase council tax collection in the district was recognised by other preceptors, helping to mitigate the cost of the changes to the scheme. For example, introducing premiums on long-term empty homes and second homes, along with the work detecting single-person discount fraud. Our proposed part implementation has also recognised the financial impact this may have on other preceptors, notably commented on by West Sussex County Council. The costs for this scheme fall to all four preceptors. So that's West Sussex County Council, the police, or properly the Office of the Police and Crime Commissioner, Horsham District Council and the parish councils in proportion to the percentage of the total council tax levy that each receive. This is a much fairer system than that currently in place. The cost for this council is anticipated to be just under £18,000 in 2025-26, with an additional £3,100 in 2026-27. I will therefore like to formally propose the recommendations. I won't read them all out, but they're set out on page 55. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Do we have a seconder? Councillor Boffey, do you wish to speak now or later in the debate?
Later, please, Chairman.
Councillor Raby.
Thank you, Chair. I just want to say how supportive I am of this, having done a lot of work over the last couple of years with the cost of living crisis. 10 years ago we didn't have a food bank at Horsham Matters, and last year we had 10,000 emergency food parcels handed out. We're one of the wealthiest places in the country. There's a lot of need, and the cost of living has really hit people incredibly hard. Council tax is a priority debt, and if people get into arrears, there are serious consequences. So being able to take the very most vulnerable people out of paying council tax completely, because even a small amount, if you can't afford to pay, could be an additional debt. So I just wanted to give you some of the figures for my own ward. There are 79 households in Roffey South in council tax arrears, and by removing that one debt is one thing that can take peace of mind for families whose income, which I just want to make this one point. There are a lot of people who have negative budgets, which means that the money coming in doesn't cover the essential bills going out. And some of the people that are now being hit with this are people who are private renters and people with mortgages, which have shot up, and people have no control over that. And if their income's not covering those outgoings, and we're able to help those residents have one thing taken off their plate, it may seem a small amount of money in the scheme of things, but it's a huge thing to do. So I'm massively supportive of it. It's a really important thing for helping people with the cost of living.
Thank you, Councillor Raby. So, Councillor Hopton.
Thank you, Chairman. I think it's one thing that perhaps all political parties in the room could probably agree on is the need to help the most vulnerable, and very pleased to read the report. However, I thought it was a done deal. I read an article in the online saying Liberal Democrat Horsham Council introduces new permanent council tax scheme. I read that on the 9th of December, so I found that slightly frustrating. And whilst this is I suspect that we'll get unanimous support for this in the room, and I personally will be supporting this motion. I guess I wanted to make it clear that the majority of the payments are being paid by the Conservative-led West Sussex County Council that's supporting this as the lead preceptor, and the amount of money that Horsham Council is committing to the vulnerable is going down. If I'm reading the figures correct, and perhaps either the cabinet member or the leader would like to correct me, but we're only paying £18,000 towards it, whereas the previous administration have paid over £300,000 towards it. So I don't want to argue about it. We all want to help the vulnerable. We're all. I just thought that the article was tacky, I'll be honest, trying to claim credit for something when they're actually paying less money towards it. But we all have the residents' best interests at heart. We're all trying to support the residents, and I'm happy to support it. I was just very frustrated. I thought it was a very poorly worded article, trying to claim some credit for something for helping people. But thank you, Chair. We'll be happy to support the motion.
Thank you. That's good. Okay, Councillor Bainham, do you wish to reply or make any closing comments? Oh, sorry. Sorry, Councillor Boffey, apologies. Do you wish to speak?
Thank you very much, Chairman. Okay, I'll start out with what I was going to say. I'm extremely proud to be seconding this motion. I've been working on this since pretty much when I actually got elected to this council. One of the first campaigns I was actually originally the discretionary discount over the 10% was largely paid for by the Treasury, and they introduced the £150 scheme back in 21-22. When we came around to 22-23, I was actually arguing very strong to make sure that to fight for making sure that relief continued, when originally the Treasury was going to withdraw that, and we campaigned very hard on that, and originally some of it was introduced. We then tried to put in an amendment to make sure that it was fully covered, but sadly the administration was not minded to support that. I continued to be committed to this, so that the next year when it came round and it was not going to be continued at all, once again I was quite proud to put forward an amendment to the budget when, yes, it was a previous administration. We only had about a third of the seats, as I recall, where previous speaker was the cabinet member, I believe, introducing the budget at the time. No, he moved on at that point. That's right. Quite a period of change. But we managed to actually get that amendment through the budget, which meant that we were in this situation that we're now making permanent, where the most vulnerable didn't have any council tax to pay. I was again proud of this administration to continue that policy last year. So, yeah, we do have some of the share of the credit for actually keeping that going. Thanks very much. But a lot of the concerns that were put around the council funding this scheme going at the time was concerns around a cliff edge, or what happens when it goes away. Well, fortunately, there's been a change in circumstances. There's a new administration in the council, and we were able to put this amendment on a sustainable footing, this scheme on a sustainable footing. So I'm very proud that this council is one of the councils that's able to, during the continuing cost of living crisis, to say that we stand behind the most vulnerable, and in this district you'll get 100% relief. So I'm very proud of seconding it. And I was happy to say just that, really, because it's a good news story. But we fought tooth and nail to make sure that this was continued when the previous administration didn't want to do it. So that's why it's been going on for so long. The previous administration didn't want to continue it. They got forced to by losing their own vote at the budget. And I really don't like doing this, but this is not me. This is not the way I like to operate. But frankly, how dare you? How very dare you? Because I remember the first time I was arguing that we need to keep supporting the most vulnerable people, I got a phone call on the weekend before our budget meeting from the cabinet member at the time saying, "Oh yeah, sorry, we're not going to be able to afford to do that. Won't be able to talk very long at the moment. I'm halfway up a mountain skiing this weekend, the weekend before the budget." How very dare you? Right, I'm proud of what we're doing as an administration to support the most vulnerable, and I can commend it to council to be approved. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Boffey. and now extend the right of reply to Councillor Bainham and to make any closing comments.
Okay, well, I wasn't on this council in the days that Councillor Boffey is referring to, so I can't directly comment on that. But I would say that if we weren't doing, you say we're taking the credit for it, but if we weren't doing it, it wouldn't happen. And in terms of the who's actually paying for it, well, it's entirely fair that the preceptors pay for it in proportion to the amount of money they get. I mean, that's just natural justice. And in terms of seeing it in the paper that the Lib Dems had passed it, I think if you read it more closely, you'll see that the Lib Dems were intending to bring it to council today to hopefully be passed. So, you know, I do not fully accept what Councillor Hogman has said in his remarks, but I'm glad to see that he intends to support the proposal. So I recommend it.
Thank you very much, Councillor. I will now put this to the vote. All those in favour of approving the recommendations on page 65 of the agenda, please show. The motion is passed unanimously. Now move on to agenda item 9, appointment of independent persons standards. I call upon the monitoring officer to introduce this item.
Thank you, Chair. The Localism Act 2011 requires that councils appoint one independent person whose views must be sought in connection with standards investigations. For several years, a council has had two independent persons, which is regarded as best practice according to the LGA. Both the appointments of independent persons and their subsequent appointment to the Standards Committees are functions of full council. Accordingly, this report recommends that council appoints both Michael Rumble and Michael Turner as independent persons and co-opts them to the Standards Committee. Thank you.
Is there a proposer for the motion? Councillor Boffey. Sorry, I thought it was Councillor Olsen. Sorry. You come next. Do you have a seconder? Councillor Waters? I assume no one wishes to speak on this item.
Chair, may I just say one thing?
Sorry, Councillor Olsen.
Thank you. I just want to first second the record of thanks to the outgoing independent person, John Donaldson, for his service. Along with other members of the Standards Committee, we've benefited from John's counsel and advice in recent hearings on a standards matter, so therefore I wholeheartedly support the announcements and the value that these individuals add to our proceedings. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Olsen. Councillor Circus.
Yes, I'm very pleased that I can actually fully endorse this decision because, as has been suggested, independent members in standards make a massive contribution, not just in terms of the work that they do, but in the credibility they bring to its decision making. So I fully support the recommendation on the table.
Thank you, Councillor Circus. I'll move all those in favour of approving the recommendation on page 95, please show. The motion is passed unanimously. We now move on to agenda item 10, appointment of the independent remuneration panel. I call upon the Chief Executive to introduce.
Thank you, Chairman. Appointment of an independent remuneration panel. The Council is required to appoint an independent remuneration panel to consider and make recommendations in relation to the scheme of members' allowances. One of the panel members notified us that they wish to resign on the 22nd of November. The panel is required to consist of 3 members. As such, we have advertised for a new member of the panel, and a recruitment process will be undertaken with the monitoring officer and the Democratic Services and Elections Manager conducting interviews with any suitable applicants. As members will be aware, the full review is currently underway, with final recommendations due to come before the Council in February. Given these timescales, Council are asked to delegate authority to the monitoring officer to appoint to the independent remuneration panel following a successful recruitment process. Thank you.
Thank you, Chief Executive. Is there a proposal for the motion?
I think it really is,
Thank you,
mate, this
Councillor.
time.
Yes, it is. Thank you, Martin. Councillor Buffett. Do you wish to speak?
I don't think there's anything else I can say that the Chief Executive hasn't already. Thank you very much, Chairman.
Do we have a seconder? So, thank you, Councillor Circus. Do you wish to speak?
Just briefly to say that when I was interviewed, I fully support the recommendation. When I was interviewed by the chairman of the Independent Remuneration Panel, what became slightly obvious to me is that not all the people who could have given evidence to the panel have done so. And one has to remember this is a panel that independently makes a judgment on evidence. And so all I would say is that all members who have an opportunity to put evidence to the Independent Remuneration Panel should do so on the basis that the more evidence they have, the more effective will be the deliberations of the panel, and ultimately the more almost certainly acceptable their recommendations will be to Council.
Thank you, Councillor Circus. Your comments are noted. Right, I suggest, therefore, we now move. If anyone else wishes to speak, no further hands. No. Okay. All those in favour of approving the recommendations on page 105 of the public agenda item 10 of the agenda, please show. The motion is carried unanimously. We now move on to item 11 on the agenda, the report of representatives. Councillor Kitchen, do you wish to speak, to give us an update on the situation at Gatwick?
Yes, good afternoon and thank you for this. It'll only be very brief because actually you've got a few more bits to come on the agenda. Although I haven't been here to a lot of meetings, I have managed to keep up to date with going at Gatwick because they have an awful lot of them on Teams, and that makes life rather easy. There is a lot going on, as I'm sure you've all read in the local press, and the DCO has now gone to the inspectors, and so it's completely in their hands. The talk about the Longbridge roundabout, which is the one that goes past Gatwick and up onto the A23, not the M23, the A23. And they've been talking for years about improving that. And if they don't do it before they start getting passengers into the airport, there'll be even more chaos than there already is at this time of day. Gatwick are proceeding virtually as if they have the permission, but we all know they haven't, and it's an outcome. It's one I personally think they'll get, but that's a purely personal feeling, and reluctantly. Other than that, there really isn't a lot to report, except GatCom are looking for 2 new people to come onto the Gatwick committee, because they've lost 2 simply through business organisations that have disbanded or merged, and they've decided to stay with the business community, and they are at this moment they are recruiting, and if anything exciting comes up I'll let you know. That's not a full report, but it's just what's going on.
Thank you so much, that was extremely helpful to the members, thank you very much indeed. Councillor Grecian, do you wish to give a report?
The new South Downs National Park Authority CEO has now taken up post as of November. His name is Sean McGeever, and he previously worked at DEFRA in areas relating to environmental issues, and specifically as Deputy Director for Access, Landscapes, Peatlands and Soils. Sean's experience at DEFRA and his focus on tackling climate change and the biodiversity crisis make him an excellent fit for the National Park Authority. This means that Tim Slaney, who filled the post as interim CEO since Trevor Beattie retired on the 1st of January this year, has now reverted back to Director of Planning. Due to reasons not known to authority staff and members, Anita Kerwin-Nye, who was appointed as Director of Countryside following the retirement of Andrew Lee in January this year, resigned at the end of April 2024. The position of Director of Countryside was taken up by Laura Sercombe on the 2nd of September. Laura has a background in the charity sector, most recently as CEO of the Girls Friendly Society, so her ethos fits in well with that of the South Downs National Park Authority, in particular in regards to the South Downs National Park purposes and duty relating to inclusivity and public well-being. The authority is currently particularly focused on the production of its new partnership management plan for 2026 to 2031 and its local plan review. The partnership management plan sets out the Park Authority's goals and a strategy to meet those goals over the 5 years of the plan. As the South Downs National Park Authority owns relatively little land within the national park, the plan relies on many partners to deliver its outcomes, including local authorities, large estates, farmers groups, wildlife NGOs, heritage societies, charities, local communities and local businesses, and others. The intention is that stakeholder engagement will start this year and run into early 2025, with a draft of the new plan ready for public consultation exercise from the 2nd of June 25 to the 25th of July 2025, with a final draft of the plan ready for approval by the National Park Authority in early December 2025, and the new plan will then run from 2026 to 2031. The local plan is intended to have its Regulation 18 consultation from January to March 2025 and its Regulation 19 consultation from January to March 2026. Statutory consultees will be given notification by email on the Regulation 18 consultation. This includes relevant parish councils and county and district councillors. I noted that I got an email today from the South Downs National Park Authority, which was also sent to parishes, wards and divisions, to councils and parishes, wards and divisions, actually inviting them to a briefing on the Partnership Management Plan and Local Plan Regulation 18 consultation, which is to be held on the 22nd of January at the South Downs Centre from 4 to 6 p.m, with a public exhibition on the local plan review from 6:30 to 8 p.m. So I assume all other members representing boards within the authority also got that. They're asking for a response by the 17th of January, but for any members not able to attend, there will be a recording available after the event on their website. Okay, so the aim is to submit the local plan for examination during the period from July to September 2026, with adoption in April to June 2027, subject to a successful examination. Should the transition date to the new local plan making system framework brought in by the Levelling Up and Regeneration Act 2023 be shifted from 1st of July 2025 to December 2026, following the recent government consultation on this, it will result in a new local plan being examined in accordance with the current local plan making system, and thereby removes the risk to the South Downs National Park Authority of involved in working with the unknowns of the new system. There are benefits in the Partnership Management Plan review and the local plan review being carried out at the same time, as it enables consultation between the two review teams. There are some policies within the local plan which will deliver some of the partnership management plan objectives, such as biodiversity net gain, affordable housing, work opportunities within the park, i.e. support for businesses and business development, conserving heritage assets and ensuring new buildings are sympathetic to local architecture styles. That's it.
Thank you very much, Councillor. We now move on to notice of motions, item 12 on the agenda. We have received 3 notices of motion. The time allowed for this item is 30 minutes. If we reach 30 minutes, the council must provide its consent in order to continue. You will notice from your papers on page 109 that the proposal impact of family farm tax on rural communities in Horsham district was originally to be proposed by Councillor Potts. Sadly, Councillor Potts is unable to be here today, and therefore I'm grateful to Councillor Knoll for proposing this motion. Do you wish to present?
Thank you very much, Chairman. Last time I presented a motion, I got cut off halfway through because I'm not the quickest of speakers. So what I'm going to do is, if you could look at your order papers and read through it, you'll probably be able to read through it quicker than I can say it. However, I'm going to take a couple of the points out and repeat them again. And I'm very, very grateful to Councillor Gretsch on her report from our neighbouring park authority, which indicated that South Down National Parks are fully in support of our farmers to the south of our district. So, the Wilder Horsham District Initiative aims to protect and enhance biodiversity across our district, working in close partnership with local farmers. Farms retained within family ownership are better able to maintain long-term practices that support wildlife corridors, habitat preservation and sustainable land management, all of which are integral to the success of this initiative. The rural economy plays a vital role within Horsham District. The motion says approximately 60%, but I believe it's actually higher than that compared to Horsham Town. Over 60% of its land is classified as agricultural. This agricultural base underpins key sectors such as food production, local supply chains and tourism, serving as a cornerstone of the district's economic stability. However, the fragmentation of farmland resulting from the inheritance tax pressures poses a significant risk to this interconnected ecosystem, potentially leading to job losses and diminished investment across the district. Jumping down, this council believes that reversing inheritance tax on farms would not only support local farming families, but also strengthen Horsham's rural economy, very important part of our economy, enhancing local employment opportunities, supply chain stability and long-term economic sustainability. Therefore, the Council resolves to advocate for the reversal of inheritance tax on family-owned farms and agricultural businesses, emphasising the critical role stable farm ownership plays in achieving biodiversity, climate and economic goals within Horsham District. Also to work with local partners to raise awareness of the challenges faced by farmers due to inheritance tax, including its impact on rural livelihoods, economic development and Horsham's environmental ambitions by engaging local media and other communication channels. And finally, ask the member to write a letter to the Chancellor and the Secretary of State for the Environment, Food and Rural Affairs advocating for inheritance tax reform that reflects the economic, environmental and community priorities of rural councils and their residents.
Thank you, Councillor. Is there a seconder for the motion? Thank you, Councillor Manton. Do you wish to speak now or later in the debate? Thank you, Councillor. Council will now debate the motion before it. When the debate is finished, Councillor Knoll, as the mover of the motion, may then speak for a second time to exercise his right of reply. Does any member wish to speak on this motion? Councillor Buffy.
Thank you very much, Chairman. Farming is vital to the UK's economy and to Horsham District's economy as well, but also to the UK's food security and its environment. It's not only about food production, but about biodiversity, the stewardship of the land and the sustainability of our countryside. And I can completely understand and agree with why so many in the farmers and those in the agricultural sector are so angry about the removal of inheritance tax relief. Many subsidies have now gone, and this is one of the few that effectively a subsidy that they could actually count on to help support them in what is an extremely challenging endeavour. It's very important to all of us, and also it's something that's not just a job to them, it's a way of life. It's in their heart and in their souls, and it's critically important. The government have clearly got this wrong. It's obvious for everyone to see. And they need to be told so, repeatedly. So, I agree with the spirit and much of the content of this motion. But we also need to acknowledge that I'm afraid to say it, but it is a complicated area and a complicated issue, and we shouldn't pretend otherwise. I also would say that as a member and a leader of a district council, when this motion came forward, I honestly sort of kind of went, well, I see this, but inheritance tax, is this authority a competent authority to be dictating or suggesting inheritance tax policy? But we are where we are, and the motion is before us, and so yes, we should consider and debate it. But if we're going to consider it and take action, we should do it properly, because what we say as an authority matters. So with that in mind, I must say I think there are a couple of omissions or issues with the motion as currently drafted, although I admire much of it. It doesn't at the moment reflect the fact that the government, not only are these actions, this policy by the government have such an impact on farmers, but it's also the fact that these were contrary to the government's previous commitments, and also it was done with no consultation, which is terrible on something of this magnitude, and we should say so. But it also doesn't mention that this didn't come as this issue is not sort of come and hit a serene industry like a tidal wave. Things were not all well before, and many farmers who I've seen speaking on this issue are saying, well, this is the last nail in the coffin, this is the straw that broke the camel's back. So a lot was going on that was making their lives a lot more difficult beforehand, and we should say so. Farms were already vulnerable as a result of things like the previous government's mismanaged handling of Brexit, the chaotic rollout of the replacement EU subsidies under ELMS, and also poor trade deals with Australia and New Zealand that undermine the high production standards of British farmers. And also, why are the government doing this? Did they just decided they want to come out and make an attack in this way? I don't think so. We have to recognise that they've inherited a public realm that is crumbling, and the dire financial situation, again caused by previous government policy. So I don't think the burden of that should fall on Horsham's farmers or any other farmers in the district. Finally, inheritance tax is an incredibly complicated area, and it has significant issues with it as it stands. And simply reversing things back to where they were is not the answer. I actually work in tax, and I can tell you, when I did my exams 15 years ago, inheritance tax was the single hardest thing to do, and I haven't touched it since because it's absolutely baffling. You've got annual exemptions, spousal exemptions, nil rate band, APR, BPR, potentially exempt transfers, taper relief, gifts without reservation of benefit, pre-owned asset taxation. That's just the stuff I know of off the top of my head, and that's before you even consider the complexities of trusts and capital gains tax. So, I think it would be far better for us, when we're suggesting actions to the government of what we should ask them to do, is to withdraw the imposition of inheritance tax on family-owned farms and agricultural businesses, and instead consult on inheritance tax reforms, so that we get this right, not just go back to a broken system before, which I have to say has been used extensively for tax avoidance. And also not just to look at this policy area action, but also to reverse the damage inflicted on our farmers by fixing our relationships with trading partners, both close and far. So that you can't look at this issue on its own in isolation. There are other steps that need to be taken as well. So I therefore propose an amendment, which I believe officers have, that they can circulate for your consideration, that picks up on that includes those proposed changes.
Thank you, Councillor Boffey. Could officers please circulate the amended motion, and we will then propose that formally and debate it. I will give members 5 minutes to read the papers. You will notice that the amendments are in red in terms of the additional text over and above the original amendment, and the items in highlight are the deleted wording from the original. 2 more minutes and then we will resume. One minute. Councillors, can we please resume item 12 on the agenda? I take it, Councillor Boffey, that you are the proposer to this motion?
Yes, Chairman.
Thank you. Do you have a seconder for the motion? Amendment.
Amendment, yes. Seconded by Councillor Olsen.
Thank you, Councillor Olsen. Do you wish to speak now or later?
I'll speak at the end of the debate on this amendment.
Okay. Before we start the debate, I would just remind members of what we are debating. We are debating the wording in red and the omissions in yellow. We are not debating the entirety of the statement in front of you. At this stage, we are debating the amendments only. Right, I will now open up for debate. Councillor Croker.
Thank you, Chair. Simple one, really. I'd like to ask those tax experts in the room, is there such a thing as the family farm tax? Or are we not looking at changes to the agricultural premises relief for inheritance tax? Thank you.
Correct. I didn't write the original.
Councillor Circus.
Thank you very much, Chairman. We introduced this motion in the hope that we might get unanimity on an issue which worries and concerns a great many people, including a great many people in this district, and particularly, obviously, within this district, the farming community. Not just the farmers. Remember, it will be the people who work on the farms who will share the concerns of farm owners. Sometimes that's overlooked, that it's the whole farming community that is affected. Now, I live in hope, maybe it's a forlorn hope, that we could actually reach an agreement on this and have an agreed statement. And in the interests of trying to achieve that agreement, I think our view would be this. If you take this in paragraphs, in red that is, the first paragraph in red we wouldn't have any problem with. It's a valid point that it's contrary to promises made. As far as the second point is concerned, we would be prepared, if necessary, to accept this on the basis that it is perfectly true to say that Brexit presented the farming community with an impact and the impact of a challenge, which many people may feel is still being worked through. So, and that obviously created an element of vulnerability. So on that basis, we would be prepared to support the second point in red. The third point in red, we think is unnecessarily political point scoring on a very important issue. And I'm sorry that the leader of the council has not been able to resist the temptation to inject an element of point scoring. He will know that we don't accept that there was a gap in the country's finances. And as far as mismanagement of the economy is concerned, I think that shows no recognition of the major, unparalleled challenges the government faced, particularly from the war in the Ukraine, which we'll be talking about later, and in terms of COVID. These were massive jolts to the economic life of this country. That we could not accept. The fourth element about a reform system and a wider package of policy actions, we're prepared to support that. And on the second page, we're happy not to challenge, basically go along with the changes being represented, all in the hope that at this time of crisis for British farming, we as HDC could put across a united front on this important issue. I hope, therefore, the leader will respond positively to what I've said and will now consider dropping the second of the bullet points in red. And if he does so, we will get, we will be able to achieve, the third of the bigger point. Thank you for correcting me. Third bullet point in red. If he's prepared to do that, we can have an agreed statement in which the whole council shares the concerns of the farming community, makes some constructive comments, and puts those comments to government on behalf of our residents and our farming community. Thank you very much, Chairman.
I will use my discretionary powers to invite Martin to comment on that.
Thank you very much, Chairman. I take what the Leader of the Opposition is saying in the spirit as is intended, and I thank him very much for his contributions. You can speak really loud if you like, love. I thank the Leader of the Opposition for his contribution, and I take it in the spirit in which it is intended. So thank you very much for that, and I would very much like to consider it. The only observation I would make initially on that is I know that the Leader of the Opposition is quite passionate about getting unanimity and unanimous motions, unanimous votes through this council. However, I have to say that recent experience of unanimous council motion votes don't really seem to actually in effect mean much to the Conservatives when it comes down to it. We've seen that recently. Let's just say if we talk about office moves, for example. So what I would like to do is I will consider it. I would like to hear the debate and what other members think, and if he will permit me, I will come back towards the end of the debate on that point.
Thank you, Councillor Boffey. Could you just give me a minute? All right, I'll allow the debate to run out, and then I'll consider the situation at the close of the debate. Councillor Finnegan, please.
Thank you, Chair. I just want to pick up on the point that Councillor Croker raised earlier and Martin Buffy agreed with. It was with regards to the first bullet point in red, because the text is in red. It does actually state family farm text in there. If that could be adjusted as suggested by Councillor Croker to the agricultural premises deficit, please. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Anybody else wish to participate?
Could I just sort of ask for a point of clarification from Councillor Finnegan as to whether she's proposing that the heading at the top of the whole motion should also be adjusted?
Thank you, Councillor Fletcher. I would agree that it should be removed from the document and replaced as suggested.
Thank you, Councillor Fletcher. Thank you, Councillor. I now invite the seconder, Councillor Olsen, to speak.
Thank you. I will try to keep my comments on to the red, but just in response to what we've heard already, I believe Councillor Circus is no stranger to political point scoring. See letter 1 of last week's West Sussex County Times. I want to thank Councillor Martin Buffy for bringing this amendment, and also thanks to the original drafting Councillor Potts and Councillor Knoll for originally presenting it. I recently had the privilege of speaking with local farmers from across our district, with John Milne, Horsham's MP, in Westminster Hall at Parliament, and you've heard quite a few farmers, their families, their children took a trip up to Westminster to make their disapproval known. I think the bits that we've added to this sort of more accurately convey what needs to be highlighted to those decision makers in power. I think we all want to support local farmers and stand with them. While the vast majority of our residents may not be farmers, as Councillor Circus noted, farming is a community. Many of us visit their farms as well, buy produce and products, look at the farms through our windows, and they make up the landscape we cherish. So I think generally that I would hope that we could come together and agree that these amendments enhance this motion, and I hope that all members will support this modified version tonight. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Olsen.
Could I just add that that includes the change proposed by Councillor Croker, I believe, originally?
And Councillor Finnegan.
And Councillor Finnegan. So specifically that's to the new 4th bullet, line 1.
To the headline and to the 4th bullet. Could I just ask Councillor Buffy to is he accepting of the amendment to the heading to replace family farm tax with agricultural premises deficit?
Well, if everyone will take this in the spirit it's intended as well, I will say, seeing as it's Christmas, yes.
Okay. And will you also accept the proposal from Councillor Circus to remove the...
Councillor Finnegan?
Sorry. No, I've moved on from Councillor Finnegan.
Okay, I'm sorry. Well, oh, sorry. I'll say it in a second.
As it's Christmas. Sorry,
yes, as it's Christmas to Councillor Circus's removal. I've said yes.
Ah, right. That was the question I was about to raise.
No, that was what I was saying yes to. In terms of the wording in the title, I don't have a problem with it, but I think it's only fair to know what the Conservative group thinks about it.
Change the title. So we're trying to avoid us going through a torturous process of having to revise this just for the sake of a few words. So just for absolute clarification, Councillor Buffy, are you comfortable that bullet point 3 is removed from this amendment?
Yes.
Thank you. Thank you very much indeed. So, Councillor Knoll, you now have a right to reply in respect of the amended amendment.
Thank you, Chairman. I'm absolutely delighted that the spirit of the room has carried this motion through with the amendments of the administration, and I'm really pleased that at long last we can agree on something. So thank you very much, everyone in the room. It is so important that this farm tax, whether family farm or commercial operation, I'm so pleased, because it's the only way, if we get this reversed, it's the only way our farms will remain as farms. I won't go into all the details that I was going to put in my winding up speech, because I don't think it's necessary. Suffice to say that all our farms are under pressure. We've had terrible weather recently. It hasn't helped them at all. And this proposed tax has led to even more stress. And farmers tell me, allegedly, that the suicide rates, and this is serious, the suicide rates amongst farmers are higher than any other comparable industry, because of the stress that's being put on them, not only by this tax, by the weather, climate change, and all the other unusual circumstances that we're facing, not only as a council, but as a country and the whole world. So thank you very much indeed.
Thank you, Councillor. We will now move to vote on the amended amendment. Yes, yes. Removing bullet point 3 and we're not on the substantive yet. We're still debating this.
Forgive me, Chairman. On the point of order, the proposer of the substantive motion has accepted the amendment. And if the proposer of the substantive motion has accepted the amendment, we move to the amended motion.
Precisely what we're about to do.
But we don't need to vote on the amendment.
Yes, we do. We have to vote on the amendment, and then having voted on the amendment, if it is carried, then we revert to vote on debate the revised substantive, and then vote on that. Councillor Fisher.
Just would appreciate some clarity, please, on what we're voting on, whether Councillor Finnegan's amendment is included or not. It is, and in the title
Absolutely.
also. Okay,
Yes.
lovely. Thank you. Just wanted to be clear. Thank you.
Okay, so we will now move to vote on the amendment. All those in favour, please show. Okay, do we have any abstentions? Thank you. And any against the motion? The motion is carried by 41 votes for, no against, and 2 abstentions. Thank you all very much. And now we go back to the substantive. Just give me a minute. Does anybody wish to make any further statements in respect to the updated substantive? Councillor Raby.
I just want to point out that me and my brother have inherited a large former chicken house, which we pay inheritance tax on. Had it had chickens in, we wouldn't have done in the past. And I feel that there is an important point that there's a fairness in the system, that people pay a fair share of their taxation. However, I'm fully supportive of this, and I really understand the pressures, because one of the reasons it didn't have chickens in was because farming was unprofitable for my grandparents, and I saw them struggling farming, and I think anything that can take pressure off and find a solution, I think this is a bit of a sledgehammer that's been proposed, and I'm really pleased to see the support for our farmers. So I just wanted to say, let's make sure that we continue to support our farmers, and also ensure that future generations, both in farming and outside it, have the opportunity to thrive in a fairer system. So I'm fully supportive of this motion. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Does anybody else wish to contribute to the debate? Councillor, Councillor Blackburn.
Hi, I won't keep you long. Thank you, Chairman. I just wanted to reiterate that I'm really pleased this motion's come through. Our farming community literally couldn't be more important. It's who we are. It's what makes the district. Even if we're driving very slowly behind a tractor, it's a nice thing to do usually. I'm really pleased to see all of this support in council for our farming families. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you, Councillor. I now. Councillor Vickers.
Chairman, yes, just to clarify what we're going to do next, because we've just voted on the amendment which changes the title of it and drops that third bullet point. Are we now about to debate the substantive motion? Because I thought that would then override the original motion.
So all of this is what we're now debating. So the original text.
So that's it.
With the amendments.
Thank you for clarifying. Okay. As it's Christmas, thank you.
Does anybody else wish to speak? I invite Councillor Jeffrey.
Thank you very much, Chairman. I would just like to reiterate the comments of Councillor Raby and Councillor Blackburn. Farming is a very important part of the Horsham community, and I think it's important that as a council we put on a united front in challenging the government on the direction they're going in, which as it stands is going to take out the working farms and use them as collateral damage to reach the very few that do actually buy up farms to avoid inheritance tax altogether. So I'd just like to reiterate that I'm very supportive of this motion, and I'm hoping that the United Front will help to try and steer the government in the right direction. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Jeffrey. Councillor Manson, as the seconder, do you wish to?
Yes, please, Chairman. Thank you, Chairman. I'd just like to thank Councillor Boffey for his opening remarks. Farming is a vocation. The long-term economic benefits of farming outweigh the short-term fiscal loss. A thriving agricultural sector generates jobs, supports local supply chains, and fosters tourism, creating tax revenue through other channels. I am pleased, Councillor Boffey, maybe you'd forgive me this as it is Christmas. We have this evening all been unanimous all the way through here. It's been a pleasure to be here, and I recommend this motion as amended to the Council.
Thank you, Councillor Manton. As it's Christmas, we've breached the 30-minute rule, but I'm not going to ask for it. I just finally call upon Councillor Knoll for his closing remarks before we vote.
Thank you, Chairman. I don't believe there's any necessity to carry on debating this. I think we're all clear within the room. So I think the right thing for me to do is to withdraw the original amendment? The original motion. Is that correct? I don't have to do that. Just leave it. Okay. All right. I don't want to stir anything else up.
No.
Let's leave it how it is. So thank you very much. Yeah.
In the spirit of Christmas.
Thank you.
Cheers.
Right, we will now vote on the substantive with the appropriate amendment. So everything that is on your sheet in front of you, with the name change, and the removal of the third bullet point, and the partridge in the pear tree. Those in favour, please. Okay. Thank you. Those against? Those abstain? Abstentions? 2 abstentions. Right. The motion is carried. Thank you all very much. It's great to have a group of people who are so committed to our farming community. Councillors, as we have taken over the 30 minutes, which is the normal time permitted for all motions, we therefore need to vote to approve for a further 30-minute period in order that we can discuss and debate motions 2 and 3. Can I therefore ask for a show of hands for approval to extend this meeting by a further 30 minutes? Thank you very much indeed. Carried, and can I suggest we take a 5-minute break? resume with item 12B, the notice of motion. I invite Councillor Sam Bateman to present this motion.
Thank you. So, violence against women is a major public health problem, and it's a violation of women's human rights. So much so that our police chiefs have declared it a national emergency. It's devastatingly pervasive, it's a public health problem, and it's entirely preventable. What I'm asking us to do is be part of the solution. It can't just be left to middle-aged, middle-class women to be doing the work. So I'm asking and calling on our council to be part of the solution and to do their bit to try to reverse this terrible uptick. In terms of how it's affecting Horsham, the latest available stats for the region are showing that there's something like 13,000 domestic abuse cases in this region, something like 4,000 sexual offences in this region, and in the last 7 years, on average, we have 30 women every year presenting to our housing team where domestic assault is one of the factors leading them to present themselves to housing. So I'm asking all councillors to try to help by joining the White Ribbon campaign and doing what they can to support end violence towards women and girls.
Thank you, Councillor. Is there a seconder to this motion? Do you wish to speak now or at the end of the debate? Thank you. Now invite councillors to debate this motion. Councillor Circus.
Just to let you know that our group here has decided that this is a matter of individual conscience, and so our members are going to operate on a free vote. My own view is that I am not, how can we put this? A lot of what is being asked for or being highlighted has, of course, been unlawful, seriously unlawful, back to 1861 and the Offences Against the Person Act. You've got to remember that the White Ribbon movement was established in 1991. I think I've got that right. No doubt the movers of the motion will tell me if I've got that wrong. Well, somebody behind me is saying 1989. I thought it was 1991, but be that as it may, there's been a sea change in attitudes since then, a sea change. There has also been a massive change, certainly in this country, in the legislative background. And that's why we have the all-pervasive effect of the 2010 Equality Act. Also, some of my colleagues tend to support my view that it's not right to single out any one section of the population. And the reason for that is I doubt if the threat to women in today's society is worse than the mounting threat against Jewish people. But Jewish people are not mentioned in this motion. And what about young black men and boys who are at serious risk in parts of the country of being the victim of knife crime? I suspect in some ways these groups are much more at risk of violence than women. That's not to defend violence against women. As I say, it's unlawful. And certainly I don't think there's anyone well, there isn't anyone in this chamber who would do anything other than oppose any inappropriate behaviour towards women. The plain fact is that we need to treat all people, without distinction, with respect. And to single out women as a special target for protection is wrong. And I think, for one, that it's an exercise largely in virtue signalling. What I would say, it's worth recalling the author Aldous Huxley, at the end of 40 years of his work as an author, conducted a lecture in London, and he was asked the question, what have you learnt from your experiences over the last 40 years about thinking about humanity and the issues facing humanity? And what he said was, I have learnt that people need to treat each other better, and that means all people. We have to learn to respect all people, whatever their situation, whatever their views, whatever their sexual orientation, whatever the colour of their skin, whatever their gender. And that's the point, and this motion does not reflect that. And that's why I, for one, will be abstaining in the vote at the end of this debate. Thank you.
Councillor Brooks.
Oh, well, thank you very much, Chairman, for calling on me so quickly. I apologise if I cut off just a little bit of Councillor Circus's peroration there. He knows that I, like him, am fond of being heard. And there's been, it's nice to enjoy...
Sorry? Can I just remind all councillors, you only have 5 minutes to speak.
Thank you, Chairman. Excellent.
Even at Christmas.
Well, I mean, it's been lovely to enjoy the spirit of Christmas and to enjoy some moments of levity in this room amongst councillors. That's one of the privileges that we can enjoy here in a good-humoured and mutually respectful environment, or at least most of the time. That's a privilege that not everybody has to enjoy, and one of the privileges I enjoy as a man is not having to think about violence against women terribly often, except when it touches my life. I imagine Councillor Frank will reflect perhaps on his experience as a headmaster. I, as many years as a teacher in a boarding school, have had some professional experiences with the results of violence against women and its repercussions far beyond the initial act, the way that it blights lives touched by its repercussions. Indeed, I imagine everybody in this chamber will know somebody whose life has been affected by an act or several acts of violence against women. If you haven't, I would invite you to consider whether or not that's because somebody hasn't felt comfortable in sharing it to you. I appreciated Councillor Circus mentioning Aldous Huxley's reflections on his experience, and I do believe that it is a truism to reflect that we could all treat each other better, but our experiences can and will differ according to our particular circumstances. I am not somebody who will ordinarily need to concern myself about whether or not I'm at threat of violence. Whereas two of my best female friends who happen to live on a particular road in London, at which a lady named Sarah Everard, who was an acquaintance of mine, very, very slight acquaintance, we'd met at a party at university, was abducted by a serving police officer who, by chance, I had shared a joke with earlier that week while I queued for admission to the US Embassy while I was applying for a visa. And so a small coincidence brought home to me the nearness of the risk of violence against women in my life. But it wasn't something that I had to think about daily. It wasn't again, something that I necessarily had to reflect on until colleagues or former colleagues of mine who are at Epsom College experienced the tragedy of another act of violence against women. Any opportunity I have to reflect on what is a terrible problem, and any opportunity I have to take to support that and raise awareness of it, I welcome, and I would encourage other members to do the same.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Raby.
Firstly, I couldn't help but want to just come back very, very briefly for Councillor Serkis's comments about worrying about other groups. I think you don't go into the cancer research shop and say, but what about heart disease? I think we can look at one issue at a time without diminishing the risk to other people. And I think fundamentally this isn't virtue signalling, although I don't see there's any problem with wanting to raise an issue that you feel is important. And in this motion, it's looking at taking action. So we look at our police commissioner has taken a lot of action and has made sure that there's resources for the police to particularly look at the crimes of violence against women and girls. I'd also just like to briefly say that we aren't at the best point in history. The online influencers like Andrew Tate are promoting misogyny. It's causing a huge problem in colleges. Girls are being treated much worse. And there was an online influencer in America who, after Trump's recent victory, said, "Your body, my choice." So the women's autonomy and women's protection in society is actually a live issue. And I think that this is just asking us to stand up and find practical ways to make sure that women and girls can live their lives as free from harassment and violence as men do. And there are risks to boys. I worry about my son going out, that he might be at risk of violence, but I worry about my daughter and my wife if they go on a train late at night, if they walk through town in the dark, and it's a different risk. And I think we can address both of those issues, but today this is a motion brought in good faith that I wholeheartedly support. And I think anyone that knows a woman that's lived in a house with violence. I worked with children when I worked in Camden with children excluded from school, primary school age children. Every single one of those children had lived in a household where there was a violent man, and that's devastated those children's lives. So I think we can address this issue, and it's just about standing up. If you want to say let's be against all violence in society, fine, but I think it doesn't detract from Jewish people being safe or young men being at risk from violence from other young men, to just say, why don't we, and why should we have to step in? We do have to step in because it is an issue. There are women who are murdered in our district. There are women that have to flee and be in shelters, and it's important that we have support for women's refuges and work closely with the police. Tomorrow we've got the Community Safety Partnership, and if we pass this, then I will ask for that to be on any other business to say, can we look at that in our district to see if there's any more that we could do collectively. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. We have 20 minutes left on this session. I have 4 further councillors who wish to speak, and then we also have the additional motion. So could I please ask councillors to consider that when they are speaking? I will move to Councillor Mercer.
Thank you, Chairman. I'll be very quick. This motion only encourages all male councillors, and that leaves it entirely free for people to make their own minds up about what they want to do. Doesn't mean you have to vote against the motion, because you're not in conflict with that. Councillor Serkis's argument is that we cannot fix everything all at once. It reminds me of the old story about the Buddha and his followers walking along the shore, and there were thousands upon thousands of starfish that had been washed up on the beach and were wriggling and gasping, and the Buddha reached down and picked one up and threw it back into the sea. And his followers said, "But Master, there are so many, how can we make a difference?" And the Buddha said, "It made a difference to that one, didn't it?" And that's actually what this is about. in relation to a particular issue here. We males can look at our own behaviour and what we can do to change attitudes and actions in our society, and that's what the motion is encouraging us to do. I think it's little enough, actually, and I think we should support it now.
Thank you, Councillor Mercer. Councillor Trott.
Thanks, Chair. I'll be quick. The trouble is with a lot of these type of things is they are termed as virtue signalling. And everyone says, oh, lots of do-gooders trying to show how righteous they are. Well, back in 2010, I implemented one of these white ribbon, or I was part of a group that implemented one of these white ribbon campaigns in Georgia. And believe me, you cannot imagine a more misogynistic country than Georgia. However, today, the rights of women have improved dramatically. We can talk about the rest of the population, but the women have achieved a far greater degree of parity. And that was all about the fact that we got the Georgian rugby team involved. And they raised the profile. And therefore my point is that although we are sitting around as councillors and responsible people wearing a white ribbon, being accused of being virtue signalling, we are people who have a degree, and I'm not talking whether the same as the rugby team, but we have a degree of influence in society. And therefore, us standing up and showing that we support this might just encourage a few more people to think about this issue more constructively. Thanks.
Thank you, Councillor Trott. Councillor Olsen.
Sorry, I just wanted to thank Councillor Bateman for bringing this to the Council's attention. I also wanted to thank you, Chair, for championing the White Ribbon campaign. To thank my colleagues who attended the vigil in the Carfax sponsored by the Sussex Women's Institute not too long ago, and for those who took up the offer of wearing the white ribbon tonight. I was hoping for another unanimous show of support tonight in this. Along with what Councillor Trott said, I agree. I don't have a problem with us highlighting our shared virtues. I think that's a legitimate use of our time here in this forum, and I personally hate this argument. I think it's important for us to raise this issue, particularly as a son, as a husband, as a father of a daughter. I believe it's important always to think about communities that need singling out so they aren't forgotten. And on this note, I would just like to also raise that I note that recently Josh Barbarinda, MP for Eastbourne, is championing the name Domestic Abuse and Criminal Convictions Bill, and after tonight I hope that you look that up and consider signing his change.org.uk petition. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. So I wanted just to make the point that here at the Green Group, every vote is an individual group. We're never whipped, so our votes are really quite valuable in terms of they come from our hearts and our consciences. The quite extraordinary arrogance of Councillor Serkis, who, as a white male, middle class, of a certain age, has chosen to basically describe the change in women's experience of being a woman as being a sea change is extraordinary. As a woman, I would say that is not the case at all, and I think many of the women in this chamber will agree that we will have not just one or two or three experiences of misogyny, but it will be constant and persistent. The statistics are stark. In England and Wales, 1 in 4 women will experience domestic abuse in their lifetime. Just think what that means. And 2 women are killed every week by a current or former partner. These figures underline the need for bold action to tackle male violence and the culture of misogyny that enables it. It's not virtual signalling. It's a very important motion, and I thank Councillor Bateman for bringing it. Of course, there are always other groups that need our attention, and I think we will, as we go bit by bit, picking our way through this council experience, tackle those. And I commend this, and I will be supporting it. Thank you.
Councillor Manton.
Thank you, Chairman. I'm one of those people who are not prepared to say or air my laundry in public. I have experience of this. I've looked up some data here. Rates of female perpetrated violence are higher than male perpetrated violence, 28% versus 21%. 13.8% was unidirectional male to female, and 28.3% was unidirectional female to male. I would love to support this motion. But I do believe that violence and abuse are unacceptable in any form, whether directed at women, men, children, or other vulnerable individuals. Efforts to prevent violence should focus on addressing the root causes, including societal attitudes, harmful stereotypes and inequalities, while supporting victims and holding perpetrators accountable. Promoting education, awareness and mutual respect is vital for reducing violence and fostering healthy relationship among all members of the community. We should commit to addressing all forms of violence, regardless of gender of the victim or perpetrator. We should encourage all council members, staff and community leaders to take a public stand against violence in all its forms. This motion addresses violence comprehensively without singling out specific groups. The motion that I was just talking about, sorry, not the one that's been presented. I think I'm going to just leave it there, sir. I would love to.
Yes, good evening, thank you. This is obviously been put together in the best of interest, but I think it could have been considerably stronger. Because firstly, it talks about males, and that refers to, I'm presuming, adult males, whereas I believe this should have been referring to young men as well, but boys, not just, so therefore effectively children, not just men. And I suppose the reason being is I would have liked this to have seen this going down the direction of education in terms of young male behaviour and female behaviour at school, or pre-adulthood should I say, and particularly around the use of social media, which I think a lot of us will acknowledge that social media has been probably one of the worst aspects, or the worst aspects of social media has been an impact on safety for all women and for children and adults themselves. So I would have preferred to have seen that. And I can say, this morning I had an interesting conversation with my daughter who told me she'd been sexually assaulted the night before on the London Underground, and in fact 2 of her other friends have been sexually assaulted only the previous week as well. So I know it's endemic, particularly in London. But I do feel we should have been a lot stronger, and they would say, because I discussed it with her today, that we need to be focusing on that education piece with young people on social media.
Thank you very much for your very personal statement. Councillor Blackburn.
Thank you. Excuse me. Thank you, Chairman, and thank you, Councillor Bateman, for bringing this to Council. I cannot really imagine a notice of motion that I'm more likely to offer wholehearted support than this one, and I have got something to say about it which might help people who feel they are not able to support the motion. I would also like to add my thanks to the Women's Institute and the Safe in Sussex team for their pragmatic work, as well as the White Ribbon charity, already 20 years old. One of the many reasons I believe that misogyny is an unpleasant topic is because it reveals a truth about society that is difficult for many to accept, as I think we may have noticed here. But if we don't accept it, we cannot try to account for it, and if we can't account for it, then we cannot strive to correct it. Part of the problem in approaching the subject is that the issue very quickly becomes clouded or misdirected. For example, there will be one of the examples of this that I've noticed is it can often prompt cries of "not all men." And those voices can become louder than those who are seeking quite correctly to safeguard half the population. Of course, it's not all men. There's another kind of misdirection where violence against girls and women is concerned, and that is that it's somehow a minority issue or a female issue. Obviously, to view females as a minority is a nonsense, and to suggest that it is a female issue as though that would make it less important is a misogynistic notion in and of itself. Misogyny, violent or otherwise, is not a female or minority issue. It's a male issue and an issue for the whole of society. The victims of crime are never to blame for the criminality. You might as well blame the victims of a bombing instead of the terrorists. It's the same equivalence and actually quite an appropriate metaphor. So let's be crystal clear about who and what we're talking about. We're talking about the many males who commit violence by word or deed against girls and women in particular in order to intimidate and dominate. The behaviour is known to occur on the street, in the park, at school, in the workplace, on the train, in a taxi, at the doctor's surgery, on the operating table, at the gym, on a beach, in the church, at a vigil, at the police station, in the courtroom, and of course in the officially recognised most dangerous place on earth for any female, her own home. The starting point in order to do something about it is to recognise this for the truth that it is. Misogyny is real, it is insidious, and it is widespread. Someone said to me recently that it has always been this way, and I wondered if this were true. No doubt there have always been spiteful, plain violent, or simply creepy people around, but it feels as though nowadays a sort of malicious audacity has crept in that is new, enabled almost certainly by more than 2 decades of online technology, particularly online pornography, which alarmingly may mean that by now the behaviour is self-perpetuating. It certainly seems to me that manipulating and rewarding a sexual response in a young, impressionable person using dubious content is a recipe for repeated harm, both personal and extrapolated. Councillors, I don't have the answers, and I'm sure you don't either. I'm just glad of the opportunity to ask questions and to offer my support to the organisations who work so hard to help innocent victims. Once again, I'm very glad that Councillor Bateman brought the motion. To do so might encourage more thought regarding a complex subject that quite simply could not be more important. Our daughters are perfectly entitled to be safe and happy in their homes, schools, workplaces and communities, as well as in the world at large. The problem is huge, and in my view, given the very low point we seem to be at now, it is likely to get worse before it gets better. But at least we are talking about it here, as no doubt others are elsewhere. The solution will doubtless require joined up efforts from everyone: families, schools, universities, boardrooms and courtrooms. It will be a long road to walk, and our particular generation is unlikely to see the end of it. But we can make a start by supporting this motion. Please do so. Thank you. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you, Councillor. I will now, Councillor, the seconder, Councillor Frank, do you wish to speak as I think we've concluded all other speakers.
Thank you, Councillor Emery. Thank you, Councillor Bateman, for bringing this, and I'm absolutely delighted and very proud to second this motion. I thank Councillor Brooks for over-promoting me. I'm a deputy head teacher, but maybe one day. I just want to. I think fellow councillors have spoken very, very powerfully this evening, and I don't want to accentuate the negative. I want to accentuate what is positive here. I do want to address Councillor Circus in terms of what you said. I sort of wish you'd just given the second part of your speech, because that was really great, very powerful itself. As I was thinking, it's not what is lawful, it's what is moral. It's just what is right. This is just so simple. It's the power of role modelling. I'm a teacher. I'm a Christian. I'm a husband. I'm a father. I'm a son. I role model, hopefully in all of those roles, what I think is right and what is just, and I describe and act out hopefully the behaviour I want others to do around me. As I said, I'm a Christian. I believe everyone is made in God's image. Of course, the Jews deserve protection. Of course, black people deserve protection. Every human being deserves respect and attention. We are asked tonight to vote on something which will just hopefully role model the right thing to do. A very simple, good thing to do. I train new teachers at my school about what our expectations are, and I always say to them, the best education, the best educators role model. They role model the behaviour they want to see around them. That's how we encourage good behaviour in young people. Andrew Tate is not a boy, he's a man. Young boys, young men do silly things, they learn, they do bad things, so on and so forth. Boys become men. This is not a problem of all men, it's just a problem. And I just feel that in supporting this motion, voting tonight, all of us have a chance to do something very good, very right, and very, very simple. I won't say much more because so much excellent contributions have been given already. So I won't repeat some of the examples that have been given today, but I do believe the right thing to do is to vote for this, whether it's your conscience or what your party wants. It is simple and it is right, and I really want us to support this. I commend this to this House. Thank you.
Councillor Frank. Councillor Bateman, can I just have some short closing comments?
Very short. Just firstly, I need to address Councillor Mountain's claims that there are a greater number of women perpetrating domestic assault than there are men. I'm sat here with these stats from Sussex Police, and that is certainly not the truth. I'm looking at the information right in front of me for 23-24. The number of domestic assaults perpetrated by women against men is much, much smaller by a magnitude than the level of domestic assaults perpetrated by men against women. So I just wanted to correct that. Second, a lot has been said this evening about trying to get unanimous votes. I just think it's really, really sad that something so small that is being asked, and not asked, encouraged, is garnering such contention. Something so small. And I think that's very telling, very sad and very telling in and of itself. So I'm going to leave it there, and I just hope people are happy in the majority to try to see if we, in our small way, can do our bit to be role models for our community. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Bateman. I now move that we vote on this motion. Please show if you are supportive. Any against? Any abstentions? So the motion is passed, is carried. I propose, in light of the time we have available to us, that we will carry over the motion on the Ukraine to our next council meeting in February. I appreciate how important it is.
I don't know if this is a point of order, Chairman, but I just want to say it could all be over by then.
Can I just get a sense of the room? Okay, thank you. Can I have a vote for an extension for a further 30 minutes? Thank you very much indeed. We will extend this for a further 30 minutes and move now to item 12C, the support of the Ukrainian people and the communities. And I call upon Sam Raby.
Thank you, Chairman. I'm going to read through it.
Point of order. I'm not clear, as I have a Ukrainian guest, if I need to leave the room or not.
Monitoring officer, you should come in.
It would appear that not.
clarify monitoring off.
Thank you. So the proposal is that the Horsham District Council stands with Ukraine, that this council joins all residents across Horsham District Council in opposing the war in Ukraine, and this council notes that Horsham District residents have in large numbers, hundreds, opened their homes to provide sanctuary to those forced to flee their homeland. And this council recognises that we play our part in supporting Ukrainian people and communities affected by this terrible conflict. And this council therefore resolves to continue to reach out to the Ukrainian community in Horsham District to ensure that we offer assistance where we're able to do so, and to continue to support, promote and work in partnership with local charitable, community and religious organisations who are working to provide resources and assistance for those affected and displaced by the conflict in Ukraine, and to support a community group to explore the possibility of twinning Horsham with a town in Ukraine as a mark of solidarity, and to build on the generous offer of sanctuary that our residents have provided, to build ongoing links between Horsham and Ukraine, to celebrate actively the culture of our new residents. I think there are two important points that I just want to make. Is sort of why Ukraine when there's conflict all over the world. In Sudan, it's the biggest humanitarian crisis in living memory. There is war and violence in Gaza, in Lebanon, in Ethiopia, in the Democratic Republic of Congo. The reason that I wanted to bring this for Ukraine is because our residents have opened their doors. We have hundreds of people and hundreds of families that are now living here, and so this is following the lead. So these are new guests, new residents in our community in a large number, and that's why Ukraine. It's not to say that I don't value and want to recognise the support that others are giving to Afghans and Syrians and other people fleeing conflict. I'm hugely supportive of the value of offering asylum and for refugees to be given safety in our country. So that's they wanted to put that out there. The why now is, as Martin joked about, but it is Christmas. We're coming up to Christmas, and one of the real horrors for the Ukrainian community is that men aren't allowed to leave the country. So we have families separated. We have who cannot be together because there's an active hot war with Russian aggression still pushing into parts of Ukraine. There's still bombing and drones of cities. This is active, so not only families separated, but the residents here will have relatives who are risking their lives where they are now, and seeing how quickly situations can change in countries. You saw how quickly the regime fell in Syria, totally unexpected. We don't know what the situation is going to be like. So I just really want to say that at this time we have Ukrainian residents who will be worried by geopolitics, and the reason that Ukraine hasn't fallen is because they've had international support from other countries, and we now know that that is up in the air. We don't know what's going to happen, and I think it's really important that we let our residents know that we stand in support of them. And secondly, I think it's the community have been here for coming up for 3 years. They've had a 3-year visa that a lot of them will have to renew very shortly for another 18 months. So I think we should actively look at celebrating our new residents and building on those links. So I feel it's really important that we do something to follow what our communities have done in terms of supporting Ukraine, and to think that if we say that we stand with Ukraine, we have a pair of families stuck in Ukraine to the people here, and they will hear that message, and I think that's an important offer of solidarity when their homeland's at risk. So I really hope that we will be able to come together to support people who are in our community who we've been able to provide support for because of the wonderful generosity of our residents. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Do you have a seconder? Councillor Trott, do you wish to speak now or at the end of the debate?
Yeah, I'd like to speak in support of this this initiative. It's vital at this time. There are many conflicts, as Councillor Raby said, going on around the world. the newspapers and the media have become slightly tired of Ukraine. But let me tell you one thing that I know from personal experience. The Russians are not becoming tired of Ukraine. Vladimir Vladimirovich Putin is not becoming tired of Ukraine. He is not losing his focus on Ukraine. I had a young captain who worked for me when I was in the UN, who was a Ukrainian officer, and he's now commanding an infantry battalion on the forward edge of the battle area, and I do talk to him from time to time. And one of the things that he said to me is the fact that the families have been removed, evacuated, call it whatever word you want, to the west, really helps the troops on the front line. It helps them because they know that their families are safe, and it helps them because they know that there's somebody out there apart from Ukrainians who give a damn, and that's first hand from him. One of the other things we were always taught as a young officer cadet was, whenever you're given a task, you say, "So what?" in your brain, obviously not to whatever general's giving you that task, but you say, "So what?" And so Horsham District Council is putting forward a motion to say how supportive we are of Ukraine. So what? Well, it is a demonstration. It's what we can do to show that we do not forget Ukraine. We do not lose focus on Ukraine, and that we will still support Ukraine, particularly with what might be coming down the road politically for Ukraine in the not too distant future. Therefore, I would heartily hope that everyone in this room will support this motion. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Trott. I now open the... sorry, Councillor Circus, yes.
Yes, I'm pleased to say that I will be supporting this, and the reason I'll be supporting this is because one of my proudest moments was when I was the Cabinet Member for Housing, and we took an active role in providing accommodation for Syrian refugees. And I think when we have welcomed and looked after genuine refugees from Syria, from the Ukraine, I think it shows this country at its best, and I think it has shown this district at its best. And I think we can, as the sponsors to this motion have said, I think we can be justly proud of our record on this, and I'm very pleased to support it. The only thing I would say is, in the third paragraph, I fully support the idea of twinning Horsham with a town in the Ukraine. I mustn't call it the Ukraine, it's just that when I was young, everyone called it the Ukraine. I must get used to calling it Ukraine. I'm a great supporter of twinning. The only problem with twinning, if it's done properly, is it does need a financial outlay to support it. It costs. And I don't know whether the Chief Executive or... Yes, all right. I can see what that face says. But if we're going to do this properly, if it's going to be meaningful, twinning needs to be supported with adequate resources. In some other local authorities it is. I don't think it is in this authority. And one of the things I would ask, and if I was amending this, is to say not only should we twin with somewhere in the Ukraine, but we make adequate resources available to make that twinning arrangement a meaningful one. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you, Councillor Circus. Councillor Perry.
Thank you. I really welcome this motion, and I also welcome the acknowledgement of all the different refugee groups that we have in the Horsham district. It's good that they're all being mentioned. But at the moment, our Ukrainian residents I'm aware of, and I do know quite a few, are really weary, they're very fearful, they're very uncertain of what's coming next. They are, as Sam Raby has said, separated from their families, and they really need a focus on supporting them. Twinning might be something that will raise their spirits, and I know, regardless of money, that a local group from Sussex has recently driven some ambulances into a town in Ukraine and were very much welcomed. They loved to know that there were people in the UK who were supporting them. And I can tell you that the residents who live with us, every time they see a village square or a pub or anything with the Ukrainian flag flying outside it, they feel that people care about them. And I think at this very point where it's so uncertain that we really need to get behind this motion, and I hope it works. So thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillor. I move that we vote on this. Oh, sorry. Oh, sorry. Right to reply from Sam Raby. Apologies, sorry.
As it's
Getting
late,
ahead of myself.
As it's late, I'm quite happy to leave it. Lovely words, Jill, Councillor Perry. Thank you, and Councillor Trott. It's really good to hear your views. I'm glad to hear that you'll be supporting it, Councillor Serkis. So yes, I'll happily move to a vote.
All those in favour of the motion, please show. The motion is carried unanimously. Right. We now move on to item 13, members' questions of notice. The first question is on the office move, which you will find on, well, it's page 3 here, but it's obviously not page 3, 113, I think, in your packs. We have 3 questions, and we have a time allocated this of 30 minutes. Oh, apologies, sorry, councillors. You'll find on your iPads that it's actually a separate document on page 3. Sorry, I have a paper. I'm privileged enough to have a paper copy. It's actually page 3 on appendix item 13. Is everybody comfortable they can find that? Okay. Councillor Minto, you have 2 minutes to ask your question.
Thank you, Chair. So this is a question to Councillor Bayman. Councillor Bayman, the Council will be moving to new premises at Aubrey House early next year. Is this move financially responsible given that we have limited resources and money is tight?
Thank you for the question. Yes, it is most definitely a financially responsible move. Faced earlier this year with a potentially very significant rise in rent by our landlords at Parkside, here at Parkside, our landlords being West Sussex County Council, we took the opportunity of a break clause in the lease to terminate and entered into a new lease with the leaseholders for Swan Walk for the Aubrey House offices. Savings in rent alone will pay back the investment for the move over 15 years. But on top of that, we are negotiating to sublet a small proportion of the office space surplus to our needs, which will serve to shorten that period. But that's not the whole picture. Parkside here is a very energy inefficient building with a large emission footprint. Now, in line with our target of net zero emissions by 2030, we would be faced with a very considerable, probably 6 or more likely 7-figure sum to pay our share of the costs to West Sussex County Council to realise this target for Parkside. In contrast, Aubrey House has a much better emissions footprint, thus making any necessary adaptations much smaller and therefore much cheaper. Apart from the financial savings, Aubrey House is at the heart of the town centre, providing the council with more accessible office for our residents and visitors. Additionally, we currently suffer here from a lack of readily available meeting rooms and collaborative spaces, which Aubrey House will provide. Councillors will not need to be reminded of being regularly decanted from this council chamber for our meetings because of room booking congestion. So the answer to your question, Councillor Minto, is a resounding yes.
Thank you, Councillor Bayman. If I may have a follow-up.
Do you wish to ask a supplementary question?
If I may, yeah. Super. Thanks ever so much for that explanation, and it leads on nicely to some further thoughts I've had. I've noticed in some quarters that the office move has been described as a waste of money, and also in some cases a vanity project. So I trust your response. You don't agree with that?
Yeah, I've noticed that too in some quarters. Naturally, I would strongly agree for the reasons that I was stated in the first part of the answer to your first question. The quarters in question, I believe you are referring to, are the misleading statements put out by our newest member, Councillor Sweeney, in her election leaflets for the recent Den by-election. Frankly, I find it bizarre that she makes these obviously ridiculous claims when the office move and associated budget received cross-party unanimous support from all three parties when it was debated in Council last May. Her Conservative councillors excuse me, all voted for it. I would therefore like to offer an opportunity to the Leader of the Opposition, if the Chairman so allows, to publicly disassociate himself from her specious and thoroughly misleading statements.
Can you just give me a minute? It's not on my script. Councillor Serkis, do you wish to respond?
Councillor Bayman knows how to land me in it, doesn't he? Yes, now then, if being a lawyer means anything, I can somehow conjure up the words. I could say that I don't remember reading the actual offending piece. All I would say is we are sovereign as a Conservative group within this council. We make the decisions on council business, and as Councillor Sweeney appreciates that in her new position that she's not a delegate of Horsham Conservative Association. She's not a delegate of anybody. She is a representative of the residents who elected her. Let's just say one of the things we're doing within the Conservative group is we are trying to improve communications. And I hope that answer...
Is that internal or
by
external?
the looks of the nod I'm getting, Chairman, I think Councillor Bainham regards that as a half-satisfactory answer.
I think as it's Christmas, we'll leave it there. Councillor Minto, do you wish to make any further statements?
No, that's fine. Thank you very much.
We'll now move on to 13.2, members' question of notice, question 2 on parking fees, and I call on Councillor Sweeney to ask your question. You have 2 minutes.
Yes, thank you. The Liberal Democrats and the Green parties agreed in the 16th October 2024 meeting of full council to increase the Horsham Town Centre car parking charges by 9%, and to specifically hike the Sunday parking charges by 300%. And these were furthered to 60% increases on a tariff earlier in the year. All this is happening over a period where inflation is predicted to remain under 5%. These increases are a real blow to Horsham residents and the independent traders who are the lifeblood of our town and who were not consulted with. The Liberal Democrats' parking increases, which were emphatically not supported by the Conservative councillors, are not due to take effect until April 2025. My question: will the Deputy Leader and Cabinet Member for Finance and Resources revisit this decision, particularly the Sunday parking charges?
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Bainham.
Thanks.
You have 2 minutes to respond.
Yeah. Well, you can have the short answer or the long answer. I'll start with the long one if I have time to finish it. First of all, I think it would be helpful if Councillor Sweeney got her facts straight before asking her question. She groups all the reviewed parking charges together and says they were emphatically not supported by Conservative councillors. So let's take the 9% Monday to Saturday increase. These were last reviewed 2 years ago, and the increase reflects inflation in that period. To quote the Conservative finance spokesperson, Councillor Hogben, in the October debate, I can live with 9%, so hardly an emphatic rejection. And I would add that as a previous Cabinet Member for Finance, he has my respect in what he has to say, even if we don't agree on all points. No other Conservative councillor spoke against the 9% increase. Where we did part company was over Sunday charges, and I will address that shortly. Councillor Sweeney also refers to a previous increase in the day pass rates. These had been untouched for reasons unexplained by the previous administration for 10 years in the case of the Forum and 5 years for Swan Walk and Pyrrhus Place. Thus they were seriously out of alignment with current hourly rates and season tickets and needed a substantial adjustment just to catch up. They now stand at 55% of the hourly day roll-up rates, which is what roughly they were when they were first introduced, so it's the same position. And in terms of consultation, I did in fact have a number of meetings together with officers, with representatives of Horsham businesses through the bid, because they were the ones who were principally affected by the rise in the day passes for themselves and their staff. Following which, we introduced a 10% bulk buy discount policy for day passes, which is comparable to the existing season ticket policy. So we were listening. Moving on to Sunday charges. Now, I set out the rationale for this in detail at the last council meeting, but since Councillor Sweeney was not there and may not have viewed the recording, I am happy to summarise. Sundays in Horsham are as busy as most weekdays, and there is thus no longer any justification to treat them completely differently as we have been doing. However, we have compromised by setting rates on average at around 50% of the weekday rates for Sundays. All our main competitors charge the same or nearly the same for Sunday parking in council car parks as they do on weekdays, and most charge more than us. We currently run town centre Sunday parking at a loss. So why should council taxpayers who don't use the car park on Sundays subsidise those who do? And finally, if we are to forgo this income, what services should be cut to compensate? The Conservative response to this has been a deafening silence. Councillor Sweeney has also cherry-picked her percentages. The rise, or in fact in some cases reduction, of Sunday charges depends on length of stay. The average extra charge car park users will see from April, based on an unchanged length of stay pattern, is in fact just 80p per Sunday visit. This does not fit my definition of astronomical. So, failing any surprise Christmas generosity in our government funding settlement, which seems highly unlikely, the short answer to the question is no.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Sweeney, do you wish to ask a supplementary question?
Well, I mean, once again, you're not being entirely accurate there, because you're saying you're saying the really high Sunday charges. They are not that high. They are comparable to most areas across in our competitor towns, as I mentioned in my earlier statement. And in terms of consultation, I've not known of a consultation on a standard rise in the parking charges on my time in the council or previously. I mean, there may have been, I don't know the entire history, but it's not normal practice. The change, we did do it for the change in the day pass, but that wasn't a pre-consultation. That was meeting them afterwards because the bid asked me to. Now, if Horsham businesses want to talk to me and to discuss it, my door's open. I'm not going to refuse that in any way. But the experience of other councils who have introduced Sunday parking is there has not been any evidence of a drop in usage. And in that case, I go back to my previous points about subsidising Sunday parking by council taxpayers who don't use it. And I also go back to the principal point of if we forego the income, then that's a hole in the budget, and then we have to fill it. So, you know, I would love to hear your suggestions on how that could be filled, because I've heard absolutely nothing. So that's my answer. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor, do you wish to make a final statement in response?
Yes, thank you. In my final statement, I just like to make some general observations as well. But I believe that one of the main reasons why I'm sitting in this council today as your biggest conservative councillor and not a popular Republican in this town is the
Sorry, can you stay to the subject matter and not
I am
divert?
sorry, let me go on with the microphone.
No, I didn't ask you about that. Could you please stay to the subject matter and not move outside of the specifics of the car parking charge?
Yes, thank you. What I'd like to say is that I think that it's clear by my being elected is that the voting taxpayers of the Den residents are sending a message to the council that they don't want to be overcharged on parking charges, for example. They don't want their money wasted. That the many residents that I spoke to on the doorstep during my recent by-election campaign, they were genuinely shocked, disappointed, and angry about several parking issues, but they see these additional parking increases as unfair and disproportionate in relation to the cost of living. Surely your councillors hear the same thing, and you may even secretly feel the same way as some of those Den residents do. In fact, the increases were so shockingly high that they reached the attention of the national press. The Daily Telegraph reported these parking increases as eye-watering. The BBC Radio and News Online quoted the owner of one of our clothing stores as saying, "I don't think it's constructive for business. People will think twice about going shopping on a Sunday," which isn't very fair to the business owners of Horsham. That was October 23rd. And
can you wrap up, please? You have a few minutes.
I understand I have 5 minutes.
Yes.
In total. The West Sussex County Times quoted a resident as saying this was utter madness, and that wasn't me they were quoting. So those are some points that I wanted to raise. I wanted to ask the council and the cabinet if they would reconsider the parking charges and include the consultation perhaps with the councillors and revisit the conservative amendment that had been suggested earlier.
Thank you for those comments. We'll now move on to the Arun Valley question. Councillor Croker.
Thank you, Chair. In the hope for a bit of brevity, I'll miss out the first two paragraphs of my question and just ask the third, which contains the actual question. Or repeat the third. So the November 2023 Habitats Regulation Assessment highlighted that nutrient neutrality may soon apply to the Arun Valley, pending Natural England's ongoing review. Has the Cabinet member received any advance indication of the recommendations likely from that review?
Thank you. Councillor Fletcher.
Thank you very much. I'm a little confused because I was expecting something written.
Are you able to provide a verbal? Thank you.
Thank you very much for your question. As you identified in our assessment, they recommend to us about
Councillor Croker, do you wish to make a supplementary question?
Yes, please, Chair. The same Habitats Regulation Assessment recommended that this council identify mitigation solutions to address potential nutrient neutrality requirements, at least for the first 5 years of local plan growth, as part of future-proofing the plan. Can the Cabinet member please say whether work is underway to identify solutions to protect these habitats while supporting sustainable development? And I'm quite happy to receive a written answer if that's more convenient for the Cabinet member. Thank you.
Councillor, do you wish to make a final statement?
Yes, please, Chair.
Thank you.
Just to say that I'm glad the Cabinet member mentioned the ongoing inquiry, and I'd just like to add my support to those officers that are spending a lot of time and effort there. It is appreciated. Thank you.
Yeah, just fully endorse what you've just said. Thank you. Item 15, urgent business. There is no urgent business. I therefore declare this meeting closed, and I hope you all now join me for mince pies and wine.